At least 15 people are dead, 30 others injured after a pickup truck rammed into a crowd in New Orleans' French Quarter.
The incident occurred early on New Year's Day near the intersection of Canal and Bourbon Streets.
The FBI has identified the shooter as Shamsud-Din Jabbar, a 42-year-old U.S. citizen from Texas. He died after a shootout with police. Investigators say they are treating the case as an act of terrorism. They found weapons in the vehicle used in the attack, including an explosive device. The truck was also said to be flying an ISIS flag.
For more analysis of the attack, we are joined by Javed Ali, Associate Professor of Practice at the Gerald R. Ford School of Public Policy at the University of Michigan. Professor Ali, thank you very much for joining us. So using cars and trucks as weapons has become common in recent years worldwide. Why have vehicle-based assaults become a popular choice for attackers, both in terrorist contexts and in isolated acts of violence?
Well, thank you for having me. And the car ramming attacks or vehicle assault attacks, these really started to take off or become more accepted, certainly in the Islamic jihadist sphere with the rise of ISIS. And by 2014, 2015, there was actually guidance from very senior ISIS operational figures for people around the world who believed in the ISIS ideology to basically use any means of attack at their disposal to conduct attacks on behalf of the group or in the name of the group. And then very shortly after those messages were sent out, we started to see these vehicle ramming attacks or vehicle assaults in all over Europe. And then by October 2017, there was an ISIS-inspired vehicle attack in lower Manhattan that killed 8 people. And so fast forward now to New Year's Day 2025 here in New Orleans, and it's a replay of the similar messages we heard almost a decade ago from ISIS leaders.
Professor, several similar attacks have taken place in Asia, in Europe, America as well during the holidays, such as Christmas or New Year's. Can you talk to us about the psychological impact this type of threat has for communities, for people celebrating what's supposed to be a joyous time of the year?
Well, it's always hard trying to get in the minds of the people who are committed to conducting these either vehicle attacks or other type of violent assaults during symbolic events and holidays. But I would have to imagine that what goes through their head is that whether it's trying to conduct an attack with a car or a vehicle or any other type of implement, that sowing fear and panic and trying to demonstrate to the countries that are being attacked is that nobody is safe, even in some of these most sacred events or most joyous events. And that seems to be another part of the calculation for these types of attacks. Now, with the New Orleans attack, Shamsud-Din Jabbar is dead. We don't yet fully know all the reasons why he chose to conduct the attack and how long it took him to plan it and prepare for it. But it was clear that this was done very deliberately, and there must have been some thought process that if you conduct an attack at a New Year's event in New Orleans, that it would send further shockwaves or ripples here inside the United States. So it remains to be seen how deep sort of the damage is to the national psyche. The U.S. has proven to be very resilient when it comes to these types of attacks, even to the scale of 9/11. But it just shows trying to get into the minds of the attackers themselves. They think that they probably think that the attacks will have a bigger impact than they actually do beyond the people that they unfortunately harm or kill or injure.
Professor, the New Orleans attacker, we know that reportedly went around the barricades to execute the attack. I mean, does this suggest that security measures like bollards and barriers are limited in their effectiveness? I mean, what other strategies could be deployed to prevent attackers from circumventing these protections?
Yeah, this is another point of the attack that will have to be explored is how much physical security or how many physical security measures were in place in this sort of radius of downtown New Orleans in anticipation of these types of vehicle attacks. I'm sure that the authorities for years there have thought about that, and whether something malfunctioned or didn't work as designed, or in a lot of times, unfortunately, with these types of terrorist attacks, the attackers themselves get lucky, and it's that combination of luck and a small vulnerability that could be exploited for tragic effects. But it's too early to tell if there was a larger or systemic security failure or just something very small. And perhaps the thinking was, well, we can take the risk in minimizing something that seemed like a small security sort of lapse. But unfortunately, again, it appears to have been exploited if those bollards or balustrades didn't operate or work as they were intended to or designed to.
So, Professor, if someone is determined to inflict this degree of harm, what realistically can be done to prevent an attack on an individual level? You know, hearing the story, for me, it made me want to just stay at home and avoid crowds.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that as a strategy. I mean, we all, those of us who live in Western democracies and these kind of open countries, you have to live your life. And as someone who was deeply involved in U.S. government counterterrorism for many years after 9/11 up until 2018, I never let what I did in my professional life limit what I did in my personal one. And I have tried to keep that same mindset now that I'm out of government. And you have to put the trust and faith in law enforcement, and intelligence, and in homeland security agencies, and there are folks there trying to do the right thing every day and keep all of us safe. But again, these extremist attackers, whether they're on the jihadist side or white supremacist or neo-Nazi or all these other types of ideological inspirations for violent action, if you're committed to conducting an attack, you're going to try to find something to exploit, and then even if it means killing yourself in the process. And that's just the risk of this world of counterterrorism. You're never going to have 100% security, but at the same time, does it mean that all of us as citizens in our own countries have to stop living our lives?
I wonder if there's any role that local communities, businesses, or event organizers could play in preventing vehicle ramming attacks. I mean, could public awareness campaigns or training for first responders help mitigate the impact of such attacks or even stop them before they escalate?
Well, it's almost not even to the trying to stop the type of attack that happens, whether it's a mass shooting or a stabbing or a vehicle assault. And I know that sounds kind of too morbid to think like that, but I spent a lot of time in my government career, working with working in different departments and agencies that were trying to figure out how do you either prevent radicalization from occurring in the first place, which is hard in a country like the United States where being radicalized isn't illegal, or working with local communities or friends or bystanders to spot the early signs of radicalization, to then refer those people who may be on some pathway to radicalization to either social services for some kind of intervention or law enforcement for arrest if they're on the cusp of committing crimes or crossing into that world of mobilization to violence. But no country has figured out how to do this perfectly, whether it's the United States, partners in the West, other countries in Asia. And this is something we're all struggling with in democratic countries. How do you prevent radicalization from happening in the first place, or identify the signs of it and stop it from moving forward? This is just a challenge that all of our countries are going to have to tackle.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Thank you so much for your insights today, Professor. That is Javed Ali, Associate Professor of Practice at the Gerald R. Ford School of Public Policy at the University of Michigan.